All right, happy Hanukkah. This is chapter 3 of Zechariah. I already recorded this on Thursday and there was no audio, so I'm going to check the light on that camera if that is on. Usually things are going right. I looked at it once, I'm like, is that green light usually on? I'm like, let's keep going. 4 minutes later, wasted time, but maybe I will do better this time. It'll be faster, hopefully. So we finally met on Tuesday. A couple passages we'll look at here. Matthew 23:30. We get a little more information here on Zechariah. Got like a million tabs open, all organized from last time, right? Let's see. There we go. So looking at Matthew 23, if you want to scroll down to kind of 35 there, and Jesus is talking to the Pharisees, and he's telling about you've had all these chances, you've killed all the prophets. It's really a long list. It's kind of painful. It's like we should kind of take that to heart a little bit ourselves. But we do have a mention here of Zechariah, the son of Berechiah. So it says, "You whom you murdered between the sanctuary and the altar." And, they murdered the blood, the righteous blood from Abel all the way to Zechariah. So it's kind of like from Genesis to Malachi. You've been killing my prophets. We see that story, and then we'll get to a little bit later of the wedding feast where he sends out all these invitations and other people come, and then he sends out these messengers and they kill the messengers. So it's a picture of the prophets, and then eventually he just lets other people come in because picture of Judah and all that they had in the temple, and they lost it. So invitation was given out, even though the invitation to join Israel was already there. It was more towards those who are in exile, those who had become Gentiles could now become part of Israel. They were welcome to the feast. And we'll see that with this Joshua the high priest kind of showing up there with the filthy garments at the end of that parable, but that connects here to just these prophets being sent out, being rejected. So Zechariah's message was not well received at that time, right? So let's move on here. Where are we at? Scrolling. This is my cultural study Bible. So we got some little notes here we can look at, which is pretty nice. Pretty nice. But let's just go ahead and start reading. I'm probably getting ahead of myself. Did I have some other notes from study? I did. I think one thing to reflect on is in chapter 1, verse 3, just turn on to Yahweh and he will turn on to you. And that's an important thing to keep in mind throughout the rest of this book. We have questions about the daughter of Babel, so if you had some thoughts on that. The daughters of Babylon, the daughters of Zion. Who is that? Of course, I had my crazy theory that they were the structures of the Tower of Babel and New Jerusalem. Because if you look at the dimensions given of the New Jerusalem, it's very, very tall, just as the Tower of Babel is probably very, very tall. And the only really account we have is from Jasher, which describes, if a stone fell from the top of the tower, that the people would weep. But if a person fell, that they wouldn't even care anymore. And that God destroyed the upper part of the tower, the earth swallowed the lower part, and just that middle section remained for a little bit in the plains of Shinar. And it would take you 3 days just to walk around the base of it. So this thing was getting pretty big. I don't know if anyone's probably take you a lot longer to walk around the base of the New Jerusalem. I haven't figured out what that would be, but again, the base, we don't really know how big the base of the Tower of Babel was, because we're assuming it kind of spiraling structures, a bigger base, got narrow as it went up. New Jerusalem's a square, I think it's a perfect cube. It's a golden cube. It's a picture of the Holy of Holies. And Satan, that kind of goes into what we're talking about here, because we see Satan showing up. We'll read here in a second, but I just wanted to say this, that we have these pictures of the four horns, the four kingdoms, and we have these blacksmiths, and we're going back and forth. Like, well, who could these be? Are they plowmen? And the picture of God's using these people as kind of like agents, like Cyrus, or, you could even make the case for like Alexander the Great, or like even Hitler maybe, that are just, allowing the people to come back to the land, just like Cyrus did, or he's using them to conquer another nation, like Cyrus conquered Babylon. But it comes to, there's 5 kingdoms in Nebuchadnezzar's dream. That's kind of like the idea of a blacksmith. So this is an idol, and a blacksmith would make an idol. This one's made from different metals, of course. But where is that fifth kingdom? Because we see that the boulder come down, and that's New Zion. It's a picture of the mountain of the Lord coming. That's New Zion, conquering all these other nations. And the good point was that Satan is an agent of the Lord. Maybe you can make the case for it, but he is firmly against Yahweh. He knows what he's doing. People say the Lord's anointed, like Trump's the Lord's anointed. And it doesn't mean that Trump is a righteous guy. It's just the Lord is using him. Satan can't necessarily be used the same way. So maybe that's why we see this fifth final battle, this final kingdom, not really fitting into the four. Because everyone has their own ideas of what they were. I thought Persia didn't count because they helped out. They brought the people back to the land. But then I'm thinking, well, we have the story of Purim, which was going to be a mass genocide. So it was averted, of course. They were allowed to defend themselves, but still not a great kingdom. Definitely not. It was a time of revival, but still, we can't look at Persia. And the same with anyone who's looking at America today. It's was America good? There were some good things that happened, but a lot of bad things that happened as well. And the leadership. We have to look at the leadership. So let's go ahead and read. Like I said, we'll keep this shorter than last time. Chapter 3. So then he showed me Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord. Remember Joshua, Yehoshua, maybe a Jesus picture here. They might have had the same name. And Satan standing at his right hand to accuse him. And the Lord said to Satan, "The Lord rebuke you, O Satan. The Lord who has chosen Jerusalem rebuke you. Is not this a brand plucked from the fire?" Now Joshua was standing before the angel, clothed with filthy garments. And remember, angel of the Lord, Joshua, another angel of the Lord. I always think pre-incarnate Christ as well. Clothed in the filthy garments. It's going to bring us back to that Matthew. Was it Matthew? Let's go ahead and read that. Matthew 21. Parable of the wedding. Blow it up. I was going to read the whole thing. We already talked about it, but the end I really want to get to. Actually, yeah, we'll skip it. You can read it. So we'll skip down to 11. When the king came in to look at the guests, he saw there a man who had no wedding garment. And he said to him, so he's probably coming out of the fields, just working, and he's at the wedding, just showing up, just covered in sweat and dirt. And he said to him, "Friend, how did you get in here? Why didn't the people at the gate stop you?" Which means he probably snuck in, right? How did you get in here without a wedding garment? The people who are going to try to sneak into the kingdom in the latter days when New Jerusalem's here, probably. And he was speechless. And then the king said to the attendants, "Bind him hand and foot, cast him into the outer darkness. In that place where there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth, for many are called, but few are chosen." People's like, this is hell, or it might even be the place outside the New Jerusalem during this time. Because we do see nations, and we'll kind of get to this later in Zechariah, so I'll save some of it for later, but nations coming and joining and sacrificing, celebrating the feasts. Sorry, tried to avoid a cough there, and it just sounded really funny. Coming to celebrate the feast, doing sacrifices. So it might be the throwing out into this world for this 1,000 years until, because the marriage is this picture of Jerusalem coming down, which is a picture of the bride. We are a picture of the bride. We're guests as well, so it's this weird dichotomy of what exactly is happening. And there's lots of debate on that, but I think it's safe to say that we are part of that ceremony, hopefully. And Jerusalem is a big part of it as well until Eden is restored after the 1,000 years. So let's move on. Let's keep reading. So he was standing there, clothed in filthy garments, and the angel, going into verse 4, the angel said to those who were standing before him, "Remove the filthy garments from him." And to him he said, "Behold, I have taken your iniquity away from you, and I will clothe you with pure vestments." And I said, let them put a clean turban on his head. We'll talk about this. So they put a clean turban on his head and clothed him with garments. So he is getting other garments, other vestments. And the angel of the Lord was standing by. So this is interesting. And there's a good note here. 5. Let's highlight this. Put a clean turban on his head. This is clearly an investiture scene. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Used in the Old Testament and the ancient Near East to portray the elevation of someone to a new position or status. Joseph, Aaron, or Daniel. But the interpretive question turns on the significance of the investiture. If it were a vesting of Joshua as high priest, we might expect some reference to the various high priestly garments known from the rest of the Old Testament. As it stands, the only specific piece of clothing referred to is the turban, and the Hebrew word used is not the same as the describing the high priestly turban. Given the larger context of temple building, an alternative that is worth considering is that the headpiece referred to here is the special headpiece used by kings in the ancient Near East to carry the ceremonial first brick for laying the foundation of the temples. So that's important too. We'll get to that first brick again. So numerous examples of this appear in the ancient Near Eastern reliefs from the Sumerian period to the Neo-Assyrian period. Okay. So if this is the nature of the turban here in Zechariah, Joshua is being purified and prepared for his next role in the construction of the temple. And we could also say maybe a king priest, which kind of makes me think about Hanukkah, because that's what those Maccabees, those Levites ended up doing, is taking the priesthood and the kingship and holding both together. And I think part of this was they were just very protective of what had been lost. They didn't want, things were safer in their hands. They didn't want Judah to continue holding that kingship because they messed up so many times. Every king of Judah fell into idolatry. They led to the exile. There were some good kings in between, but ultimately they were scared of that. So let's keep reading. Interesting, though, that that's what that says. There we go. All right. So we're on to verse 6. And the angel of the Lord solemnly assured Joshua, "Thus says the Lord of hosts, if you will walk in my ways and keep my charge, then you shall rule my house and have charge of my courts, and I will give you the right of access among those who are standing here. Now hear, O Joshua the high priest, you and your friends who sit before you, for they are men who are a sign. Behold, I will bring my servant the branch." This gives me like the idea of Isaiah, when he's talking about the root of Jesse. It's a different word here, but kind of grafting theology. And we'll get into that a little bit more in chapter 4. I might save some of that for then. So for behold, on the stone that I have set before Joshua, on a single stone with 7 eyes. 7 eyes is just the idea of completion, or not completion, all-knowing. God is, he's all-seeing, all-knowing. Single stone with 7 eyes, or facets might be the word there. We'll look at the commentary on that one. And I will engrave its inscription, declares the Lord. Interesting what the description might be. I think we kind of see that in chapter 4, what is actually drawn on this stone. Engrave its inscription, declares the Lord of hosts, and I will remove the iniquity of this land in a single day. In that day, declares the Lord of hosts, every one of you will invite his neighbor to come under his vine and under his fig tree. Vine, fig tree, olive tree, grafting, garden terminology. The garden was the first temple. We see this talk of this stone. It's all kind of feel like it's pointing to Jesus in a lot of ways. But let's read some of the commentary here. And one thing about the commentary is it doesn't really give us too much on prophecy and all that. Sorry about that. So it wants us to see the note for the branch on 6:12. So that's later here in Zechariah. So spoiler alert, we're looking ahead. So 6:12. Say to him, thus says the Lord of hosts, behold, the man whose name is the branch, for he shall branch out from this place, and he shall build the temple of the Lord. It is he who shall build the temple of the Lord, and shall bear royal honor, and shall sit and rule in his throne, and there shall be a priest on his throne. We're seeing this doesn't exactly fit Joshua. Doesn't really fit Zerubbabel, because he was a governor, right? He was a governor of Israel, but he wasn't the king. The king was still, Darius, who ruled everything. We talked about that last time, how the city was without walls, to keep the people under control. And God was like, well, I'm going to do the same for you as well. I'm going to put this wall of spiritual fire to protect you, but I still want you to have faith in me, right? So picture of possibly Jesus, the branch, the living stone, the foundation stone. Who's going to sit on the throne? Who's going to be our high priest? Who's that Melchizedekian priest? That's definitely Jesus. And there's the branch. You could probably make cases that it's Zerubbabel. We have pictures of Joshua the high priest here, but there's prophetic and spiritual meanings that go along with this as well. So 3:9, single stone with 7 facets. Since the context of Zechariah speaks of the stone that is set before Zechariah, the discussion would likely concern a foundation stone or the first brick. In this regard, it should be noted that it was not uncommon in Mesopotamia to include gemstones in the foundation deposit of a temple. Consequently, we might suggest that the foundation stone is being set before Joshua and 7 precious stones are being laid in. So that might be the 7 eyes that we see. Also picture of the menorah, right? There's 7 lampstands as well, which we're going to get into. So we see 7, and then chapter 4, talking about the lampstand. Let's see if there's anything interesting here. I see the Council of the Divine, and there's an interesting article on that. If you're into Michael Heiser's work, it's all about this Satan. So is it Satan or is it adversary? Because the same word is used even for the angel of the Lord, like when he stops Balaam and the donkey. The donkey can see the angel of the Lord, Balaam can't, but that angel is referred to as adversary. So, of course, in your translation, it's going to say adversary, but it's the same Hebrew word, Satan, there. So it's like, can a good person be referred to as a Satan? Yes. So is this the Satan in the old serpent of Revelation? Is it serpent in the garden? I kind of think it is, just because if it was just a member of the Council of the Divine, and some people make the case that Satan is a member of the Council of the Divine. It's like, isn't he in hell? Is he stuck there? Does he move around? We see him later ascend to heaven, so we assume that maybe he's on earth, and he's kind of wandering about, like he says in Job. And it could also be possible, some people theorize, that there's multiple Satans. I'm not really trying to say which one is which. It's just giving you some ideas to think about. But anyways, so how it reads, I'm trying to read it here because of course it's not here. So let's open this up. Just how the Lord rebukes Satan. And the Lord said to you, Satan, the Lord rebuke you, O Satan. The Lord who has chosen Jerusalem rebuke you. Is it not a brand plucked from the fire? And that's a picture of refining and purity. Ritual purity, moral purity, we're kind of get into in this book. And maybe we'll glance quickly at some thoughts. I think I had the PowerPoint pulled up last time. Of course I didn't pull it up this time, so maybe we'll save that for next time. But maybe you can do a little investigation on ritual purity, justification, sanctification, glorification, the first redemption, the final redemption, all of those weird terms. A lot of people were saying the same thing, using different terms. So that's why I like to look at all the terms so we can cover them all, give different definitions for everything, so we can be certain what we're saying. So I think this is definitely a picture of Satan. You're like, duh, it's Satan. But just the way Yahweh is opposing him. And his counsel, it has a purpose, because they're allowed to object and give ideas. Like in Job, it was kind of like a courtroom kind of scenario where it's like, well, does he really love you? Is he really going to obey if you do this to him? It might be another scenario like that where it's like it's testing instead of a single person, because Job is a lot like the picture of Israel. It's like, everything was taken from Job, just like everything was taken from Israel. The temple was taken. Now we're rebuilding it. And back to the idea of the temple, the garden was the first temple, and we had the tabernacle, and then the first temple of Solomon, and then now Zerubbabel is building it. It's building it a little bit bigger, and then Herod really expands on that, and that's destroyed all again. But Jesus, said, he's like, I am the temple, and I will rebuild this in 3 days. By him dying, him being that brick, that foundation brick that's being described here with the 7 facets or the 7 stones. And we're going to see in chapter 4 a picture of the 2 olive trees and the menorah, which I think were on the stone. Because they had 7 places for those stones to be tied into the menorah. So it's possible that was what was engraved on this stone. So he is that temple, and he's going to be placed in the New Jerusalem, which is going to have a temple. And then when Yahweh comes down, there's no more need for that temple. He is the temple. It's the return to the garden state. All right? Not Jersey. Should clarify. Eden is not Jersey. Dear Lord, no. But, the Edenic state. There we go. It's a better way to say that. That's probably why they use Edenic state, not the garden state. Well, that's all I have. Can't say if it's any better or worse than the last time. It was definitely shorter because I didn't get into the PowerPoint, but I definitely want to do that soon. Look at some of these turns because I think it's really important. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed that read again. Don't listen to anything I say. Go out there and test it for yourself. I feel like I need to say that since the last video didn't work. So I'm like, did I speak utter heresy the whole time? So I'm going to lay out the fleece again, do a little Gideon here. We'll try this video and see if this one goes through. See if I said it all correctly. Shalom. Have a great Hanukkah. Some good temple stuff in this chapter. So I like that. It's all relevant.